I'm on? Okay, cool. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Benjamin Drummond Emancipation Day celebration and another collaboration with Mosaic Theater. My name is Sharita Jacobs-Thompson, and I have the pleasure of organizing these programs with my partner who just left, Marianne Brownlow. Tonight, we welcome a dynamic panel and conversation about the Lincoln statue located around the corner in Lincoln Park, and a program titled the Emancipation Memorial, Contested Memory, Historical Responsibility, and Their Convergence with Art. Part 2, Race, Memory, Monuments, and Forgetting. We had part 1 of this conversation on Saturday, and I see some familiar faces from that at Lincoln Park, and it was a wonderfully engaging conversation with Dr. Kay Wright-Lewis and our panelist, Psalm, who is back with us here today. So we are really excited about this part 2. We also want to announce another Drummond program, Mapping Segregation, a walking tour of DC that will be led by Sarah Jane Schoenfield, happening on Saturday, October the 14th at 10:30 a.m. So please join us for that as well. And let me also take a moment to thank National Capital Bank for their continued support of these programs. Now, let me provide a very brief introduction of our panel so I can get out the way. Tonight we have historian Dr. Edna Greene Medford, former chairperson and professor of history at Howard University, where she specialized in 19th century United States history with an emphasis on slavery, the Civil War, and Reconstruction. Dr. Medford's publications include Lincoln and Emancipation, the Emancipation Proclamation, 3 Views, and she is the editor of Historical Perspectives of the African Burial Ground, New York Blacks in the Diaspora, Volume 3 of the New York African Burial Ground, Unearthing the African Presence in Colonial New York. Welcome, Dr. Medford. Also on stage this evening, we have award-winning playwright, director, and actor, Psalm. He has a long list of playwriting credits to his name, including Free Juju B. Brown, and Zomo the Rabbit, a hip-hop creation myth, and directing credits that include Native Son and Cinderella, the remix. He is the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation Playwright in Resident at Mosaic Theater, and he is the playwright of Mosaic Theater's current production, Monumental Travesties. Welcome, Psalm. Thank you for being here. Now, he's not taking the stage, but in addition to our playwright, we have in the audience Monumental Travesties director and Mosaic Theater Company's artistic director, Reginald Douglas, who I hope will say a few words before the night is over. So welcome, Reginald. Thank you for being here. Now, our wonderful panelists will be in conversation with our equally wonderful Jonquilyn Hill. She is the host of the Weeds, Vox podcast for politics and policy discussions. Prior to joining Vox, she was a senior producer at WAMU and NPR's 1A, where she was a member of the team that helped launch the show and produce segments on everything from Cardi B to the National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party. While at WAMU, she also created and hosted Through the Cracks, a podcast that examined the systems in place that led to the disappearance of 8-year-old Relisha Rudd from a DC homeless shelter. Prior to that, she worked on NPR's 2016 elections desk, New York One, and NBC's Washington Bureau. So everyone, if you will make sure you silence your mobile devices, and please help me welcome our guests for this evening.
Before we begin, are you doing an excerpt?
I'm prepared to.
Yes. Why don't we go ahead and start with that?
Oh, you want to start with that?
Yeah,
Okay,
let's go ahead
excellent.
and get started with that.
I just have to say that the actors are much better than I am, so please. Bear with me. Mic check, check. Hello. All right. Cool. So this is hello. I might without the microphone. Oh, we need it. Oh, okay. Oh, gotcha.
We hear you. We hear you now, though.
Okay, wonderful. So this This excerpt is early on in the play, and it is after Chance, a performance artist, has come home to his wife Brenda in he's come home to their Capitol Hill home, and he has told her that he has beheaded Abraham Lincoln's head from his monument right up there, and he's told her that he has dumped the head in his neighbor's garden. She doesn't quite believe him. She thinks he's joking, and then we hear a knock at the door, and their neighbor Adam enters with Abraham Lincoln's head. Adam, look what some, insert expletive here, put in my garden. Brenda looks at Chance. Chance, oh wow. Did you see who did it? Adam, what? Chance, did you see who did it? Adam, no. And lucky for them. If I did, they'd be behind bars. Where would someone even get this? Chance inspects the head. Chance, looks like the head from a statue at the park. Adam, what statue at the park? Chance, the one of Abraham Lincoln? Adam, I don't remember. Chance, the statue of Lincoln. Adam, and the slave, that's right. How could I forget? Chance, I don't know. Adam, why would someone sever the head of that statue? Chance, maybe because the depiction of the black man glorified and tried to immortalize black subservience. Adam, but doesn't that statue commemorate the end of slavery? Chance, doesn't matter. It was offensive, morally obscene, and disgraceful. Adam puts the head down. Adam, wait a minute. Sounds like you agree with what this person did. Chance, I didn't say that. I'm just saying, based off the statue's imagery, I can understand why someone would be upset enough to do something like this. Adam, but this isn't the way. Systems foster change. We can't descend into anarchy. Chance, what's wrong with anarchy? Adam, it's unnecessarily messy. Chance, I honestly don't recall the details of the statue, but I'm sure it wasn't that bad. I mean, it's a statue of Abraham Lincoln. It's not Robert E. Lee or Stonewall Jackson. Chance, since you don't recall the details of the statue, I'll jog your memory. Adam, what? Kneel. What? Chance, kneel. I'll show you what the statue looked like. Brenda, Chance, he doesn't recall, so we'll do something he'll never forget. Adam, no, I'm good standing. Chance, but don't you want to understand why someone would cut that head off? Adam, not really. Chance, not really. Brenda, not really. Adam, it doesn't matter, man. Not only did this person break the law and desecrate the memory of the great emancipator, they ruined my garden. Chance, huh. Adam, what's that supposed to mean? Chance, what's what supposed to mean? Adam, you said, huh. Chance, did I? Adam, yes. Chance, didn't realize. Adam, must have been some kind of Freudian slip. Chance, or Du Boisian faux pas. Brenda, a who? Adam, a Du Boisian faux pas? Chance, yes. It's like a Freudian slip for black. Anyway, it didn't mean anything. Adam, oh, it definitely meant something. People don't just say, huh, for no reason. Chance, to be honest, like Abe. Adam, what? Chance, it's just. Adam, spit it out. Chance, I thought you were an ally. Adam, I am an ally. Chance, I don't know about that. Adam, I am. As you know, I have a laminated Black Lives Matter sign in my front yard, right next to my Climate Action Now plaque. And I didn't laminate the climate sign because I wanted to limit my use of plastics. Chance, allyship is more than throwing up a sign, Adam, laminated or not. It's about action, what you do, even if you feel uncomfortable. Adam, I don't disagree with you, but I don't see how me kneeling is a demonstration of allyship. Chance, an anti-racist would kneel. And you know what Ibram X. Kendi says. You're either an anti-racist or you're, you know, Adam. But I'm not. Chance. Adam, I'm not. I'm not a I'm not the R word. Chance. It's called a tableau. Adam. Oh, a tableau, an image with your body. Chance. Yes. Why didn't you say that? I do a tableau. I did those in an acting course in college. Tableau are fun. Chance. Yes, fun. And they can be powerful tools of transformation. Adam. Smells good in here. Brenda. Now I'm chomping. Adam kneels. Chance meticulously adjusts him into the position of the black man in the Emancipation Memorial. Chance gets him into position like Lincoln. Chance, how does that feel? Adam, humbling, but I can't say I feel disgraced. Chance, oh no? Adam, no. Chance, take off your shirt. Adam, excuse me? Brenda, Chance, remove your shirt. Remove it? And your pants. Adam, why? Chance, the black man in the statue was naked except for a loincloth. Brenda, Chance, that's enough. Chance, no, I'm revealing to Adam what it's like to be the man in the statue. Not Abraham Lincoln, who was completely dressed, but the other man, the practically naked black man. Adam, is this one of your performance art things? What do you call them? Chance and Brenda. Actions. Adam, actions. Is this one of them? Chance, no, I'm currently between projects. Adam, unemployed. Chance and Brenda. Conceptualizing. Adam, gotcha. Frankly, Chance, I really don't understand exactly what it is you do. Brenda, neither do I. Chance, it's easy. I deconstruct symbols of white supremacy, thereby altering our collective hegemonic reality, consequently accelerating global BIPOC liberation in a historicized context. Adam, what? Chance, I'll piss off racists. Adam, would it make you feel better if I stripped like a slave? Chance, but he wasn't a slave, Adam. He was emancipated. So that would make him a free man, correct? Adam, my mistake. Free man. Chance, yes it would. It would make me feel better if you stripped like the free man. A silence. Adam begins to strip down to his underwear. Printed on the seat of his briefs are the words, Black Lives Matter. Adam, told you I was an ally. Brenda, this is ludicrous. Adam, you don't have to do this. Adam, I know, but I'm an anti-racist ally, Brenda. And this is what your husband wants. Brenda, this is absurd. Chance, this is a reflection of history. Adam, wearing only his underwear and socks, gets back into the tableau. Chance, socks. Adam removes his socks. Chance, shit. Brenda, damn. Chance, what happened to your feet? Adam, COVID toes. That's what the doctor called it. Happened after I got COVID last year. Chance, put your socks back on. Brenda, thank you. Adam puts the socks back on and Chance sculpts him into position. Chance stands over Adam in the superior stance of Abraham Lincoln. The tableau is striking and disturbing. They hold the pose for several fraught and mysterious moments. Chance speaks while still in the tableau. Chance, so this is what it feels like, huh? Adam, what do you mean? Chance, being white in America. Chance comes out of the tableau. Adam speaks while kneeling. Adam, you've got a legitimate axe to grind, Chance, but it's not with me. My great-great-grandfather was an abolitionist. He booked several of Frederick Douglass's speaking engagements. I grew up in a house that used to be a stop on the Underground Railroad. I voted for, Chance and Brenda, don't say it. Adam, twice, 2 times. Chance, I have no ill will toward you, Adam. I just want you to understand why a person might want to sever that head. Adam stands up and begins to put on his clothes. Adam, beheading Lincoln is one thing, but destroying my prize-winning English shrub roses is another. If I didn't know better, I'd say the degenerate did it on purpose. What sort of person would do such a thing? To ruthlessly crush natural beauty is beyond my ken. And if it's the last thing I do, I'm going to find out who did this and bring them to justice. Brenda looks at Chance. Chance, I hope you do. Brenda, me too.
Thank you so much for sharing that excerpt with us. I think it does an excellent job of sort of setting the scene for this conversation. Dr. Medford, I'm going to start with you. First, can you lay out some of the background? Can you give us the context under which this statue was built and the purpose of the Emancipation Monument in particular?
Right. We have to remember that less than 2 decades up to the time of the dedication of the memorial, there was the Dred Scott decision in 1857. And that decision by the Supreme Court indicated that black people had no rights that white people were bound to respect. And so the war starts, of course, in 1861. As a consequence of the war, freedom is declared. People who had been enslaved and who were promised freedom, because we need to remember that the Emancipation Proclamation does not end slavery. It opens the door to freedom. And so people who had been promised freedom by the Declaration, by the Emancipation Proclamation, and do get that freedom as a consequence of the 13th Amendment, and we do need to remember, it's the 13th Amendment that does end slavery forever. Those people want to recognize, they want to acknowledge the role that Lincoln had played in their liberation. And so you have the woman, Charlotte Scott, who offers the first $5 toward that. The monument is actually paid for by people who had been enslaved. And so Charlotte Scott is one of those people, but she was not freed by the Emancipation Proclamation. She was freed by her owner, who was a Virginian, who was a Unionist, and he couldn't bear staying in the Confederacy, so he left there. And I think by 1862, before the proclamation is actually issued, she has her freedom, because he leaves Virginia and goes to Ohio, a supposedly free state, and we can talk later about what freedom means in those states. But he grants her her freedom as a consequence of her, having to move there. And so, but she still feels beholden to Lincoln. And so other people do too. I mean, mostly that the statue is paid for by primarily soldiers and sailors, veterans of the war. The legend has it that it's paid completely by formerly enslaved people. I don't know that that's true. I'm sure that they paid the bulk of it. I know that Congress paid for the pedestal, but they did feel that they had an obligation to Lincoln. But the problem is, by the time that that memorial is dedicated in 1876, a lot has happened. We've had the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments that were supposed to ensure freedom and at least citizenship to African Americans. I almost said equality, but equality means more than just freedom from slavery and citizenship and voting rights. What's happening, especially in 1876, is that there are a lot of riots, politically motivated riots, against Republicans, both black and white Republicans in the South, by Southern Democrats who had been, the vanguard of the Confederacy. And so there's a lot happening, at that point. So it made sense to Thomas Ball that the image of the formerly enslaved man would be one of him half kneeling and being, beckoned to rise by the great emancipator. That's not necessarily how black people saw it, and it's certainly not how Frederick Douglass saw it. Frederick Douglass did complain about that, but he did it 5 days after the dedication. He was the main speaker at the dedication, and he said nothing about it there. He said some other interesting things, but he didn't go there. So I don't know that the average black person would have had a problem with the image of the man, half kneeling and half rising. But the problem that Douglass saw with the statue, and what people see now, is that it does show the black man in an inferior position. But that was typical of that period. Even abolitionists did not think of black people as on an equal footing with white people. And so we are bothered by it. I'm not so sure that many people during that period were bothered by. And in fact, even Douglas spends quite a bit of time when he writes the letter to the National Republican complaining, the newspaper, complaining about the statue. He spends time talking as well about the fact that Ulysses S. Grant doesn't get credit for citizenship and voting rights for black people. So it's not just he doesn't like the image, but he doesn't like the fact that Grant isn't included in the statute.
I think that's so interesting, and I also, what I love about your play is that it's sort of this marriage between art and history. We really see the two in conversation with one another, like we're having the two of you in conversation right now. And I'm curious for both of you, how does art look back at history and what does that tell us? And also, how does history shape art and reshape it, you know, when we look back on it? And I'll let either of you start with that.
Yeah, art and history have sort of a holy relationship. I think artists are creative historians. We're not bound by the same disciplines and sort of parameters that historians have to be bound by. So we can sort of have fun with history and recreate and make these legends. You talked about, well, the legend goes that X, Y, and Z happened. Oftentimes we don't know, and historians have to sort of preface what they say. At least responsible historians have to say, well, we think this was the case, we don't know. An artist can just say, hey, this is the truth of this world. So we can sort of use our imagination to imagine a history that maybe we wanted to have happened, imagine a history that maybe was more gruesome than reality in order to sort of drive home a point. So there's flexibility in what we do as artists and as myth makers. Joseph Campbell says the dream is a private myth and the myth is a public dream or something like that. And I think there's something about that statement that resonates with artists when it comes to dealing with history.
What about you, Dr. Medford? How do you think of history and art in conversation with one another?
You know, I think that I have to admit that art can be more powerful than just the words alone, whether it's a painting or a play or music or whatever. People tend to remember that, something that they can see. We're not reading the way we used to, you know? So if we can't get it across in a textbook, then we can get it across perhaps in a play, in a painting, in music, in some other way, in some form that's different from the standard way of disseminating history to people. But I think you have to absolutely have those other disciplines involved when you're trying to study and trying to disseminate history to people. That's the way they're going to learn. That's the way you really change people's minds, is to show it that way, I think.
And I'll add and say, it makes me think about the tradition of like West African, like the griots.
Yeah.
They're artists, they're singers, they're musicians, but they're singing about the history of their family, of their village, of their country. So that sort of melding of art and history, I think, goes back to an African tradition that I'd like to think that, you know, I tap into when I create a piece like this.
It's so interesting that you bring up this idea of the griot, because I think that's what kind of drew me to podcasting and audio and radio. There's just, I don't know, there's an intimacy to the spoken word. There's something, I don't know if it's like, it almost feels encoded in the DNA. Something kind of just draws you to it. I think that's so interesting. To pivot a little bit, Dr. Medford, you are one of the preeminent scholars on President Lincoln, and I'm just wondering, because there are so many subjects that you can look at when it comes to history, what drew you to him?
How do I answer that? Let's see. I I study Lincoln because I'm interested in what African Americans thought and did during the Civil War era. I'm not interested in him per se because he was there, because he was president, but how what he did impacted their lives. And so you can't talk about the Civil War and even Reconstruction without talking about what Lincoln is doing that impacts the lives of African Americans, even though he's been assassinated by 1865. Still, what he was planning as early as 1863 in terms of Reconstruction does impact the lives of African Americans, at least in those earlier months when Johnson takes over. So I don't consider myself a Lincoln scholar at all. I see myself as a scholar of African American history. I want to center African Americans in the emancipation narrative, because I think too frequently what has happened in the past is that historians have talked about Lincoln and emancipation as if Black people were on the periphery, you know. And I think that's what bothers me. I know that's what bothers me about the Emancipation statue as well, because what it does is it just simply negates anything that Black people did to liberate themselves. Now, Lincoln's not responsible for that, but certainly Thomas Ball and other people who were influencing him thought that. They thought Black people had no role in their own liberation, despite the fact that you had almost 200,000 soldiers and sailors, Black soldiers and sailors, liberating people. So it's my way of adding to the narrative.
I think that's so interesting, because I think maybe even outside the context of, you know, emancipation and Reconstruction, even we as Black people can sometimes diminish the role our ancestors played in what got us here right now, like sitting on this stage having this conversation. I think of those t-shirts where people are like, I'm not my ancestors, I got hands. I'm like, I feel like your grandma got hands. I feel like that's definitely something. And I think that's something that gets erased throughout this conversation about the monument, is the role of Black people erecting it. And you mentioned that, and it feels so ironic to erase them when the whole conversation is about the fact, like, no, this needs to be about putting Black people in the forefront. Like, it needs to be about Black people's autonomy. Like, this is not a statue that necessarily depicts autonomy. Could the two of you talk about that a little bit? That irony, that push and pull?
Yeah. I think Dr. Medford just hit it right on the nose. I mean, when I see that statue, I see the intelligence, the ingenuity, the creativity, the perseverance, the curiosity, the humanity that it took for us to really free ourselves. And, especially if you even start to sort of scratch the surface of history and scratch the surface of what African Americans, how we moved toward freedom, pre-Emancipation Proclamation, you can't but look at this and say, this is a lie. Like, I just recently learned about freedom suits, which were suits that enslaved peoples waged in the court system pre-Emancipation Proclamation to get their freedom. Hundreds of these suits happened. Many of them happened in Prince George's County, and people were winning their freedom prior to the proclamation. So even through the court system, we were working and figuring out how to liberate ourselves. So I think that's the power of art. And when I look at this object, this piece of art, it seems so basic and limited. It makes me think of like the reason why I became a writer. I started out as an actor, and then the roles that I saw that were available, a lot of them didn't really echo the dignity and pride that I felt as, a person of African descent. And this is a prime example of sort of the types of imagery and representations of Black people that turned me to writing so I could say something different about our humanity.
Yeah, I'm curious about, I had the pleasure of seeing Monumental Travesties this weekend. It was great. If you haven't seen it, highly recommend. What drew you to this statue? Can you tell me about, your relationship with it over time?
Yeah.
Like, when did it first enter your consciousness?
At some point, I honestly don't remember the exact day, but I was a student at Howard, and and I found myself down in Capitol Hill for something and saw it, and I just couldn't believe this was up. For the life of me, I couldn't understand why everybody who saw this wasn't outraged, and it took me decades to actually get to the point in my career, in my life, where I could actually finally say something that I thought was worthy to actually be a response to this piece. So the act of writing the play was a way for me to convert that contempt and turn it into something positive. And then through the writing of the play, my relationship with the monument now has changed. So I don't necessarily feel the emotional and psychic disdain that I initially felt. Now it's like inspirational dissatisfaction. It's a source of inspiration. Like in my mind, it's connected to the play now. I still have issue with it. It's still problematic to me. But now I look at it as this was my inspiration for the play. So if this wasn't here, it's kind of like making the most out of a horrible situation, turning the entrails of, the pig into some sort of feast and fancy thing.
It's hogmogs.
Exactly. Exactly.
Dr. Medford, has your relationship with this statue at all changed over time, especially throughout your scholarship?
Yeah, well, I think I came to understanding of the statue through what I had experienced as a child in Virginia. I grew up outside of Richmond. And whenever I came into the city and I had to travel on Monument Avenue, I had to encounter all of these Confederate generals, which I found really unsettling. And so when I saw the Emancipation statue, I recognized, that there was a problem there with the way the black man was being depicted, but I didn't have the same kind of visceral dislike for that I did for those Confederate monuments. And so I see the purpose of the statue as being something very different from what those Confederate monuments were meant to convey. And so I would not have I would not have had that kind of, I wouldn't have had Lincoln and one single black man on his knees to begin with. I would have had a more representative piece that showed the role that a variety of people played in the birth of black freedom. Because it's not just Lincoln, it's abolitionists before Lincoln, who was not an abolitionist until the war made him that. I would have included common, everyday men and women who struggled during the war to free themselves, long before Lincoln came to the realization that he would have to do something about slavery. I would have had something that showed all of those black men who served in the Union Army and Navy, who were liberators. I would have looked at all of those people who stayed on the plantations and destroyed the institution of slavery from within, before the Emancipation Proclamation and before the 13th Amendment, or that sort of pushed Lincoln to make a decision about what was going to happen to all of these people, these 4 million black people who were under the Confederate, well, most of them under the Confederate control. So I think that the statue by itself could be very instructive because it shows us what people were thinking or how they viewed black people during that period. And so I think it's important for that reason. But left alone, it's not enough. Douglas mentions in his letter to the National Republican newspaper that one statue does not convey, the enormity of the emancipation process. And I think he was absolutely right. That whole park needs to be turned into an Emancipation Park where you've got all of the signage and other statues that show the complete story of emancipation.
I'm glad you brought that up, like this idea of the Emancipation Park here in DC, because this play was very, very DC. Like even before it began, like you hear some go-go music. The vest like has even the costuming is like "Don't mute DC," and you know there are all these nods to the district. And I'm curious what role a sense of place had when it came to this writing this for you, like DC
So
as
much,
the play.
so much, and in many art forms, they say to get to the universal, you have to really be really specific and like hyper focused. So that was one way for me to sort of get to the universal in terms of these characters and get to the meat of these relationships in terms of like even where a character works and just where they might just move through life, and in terms of the community. I mean, it's set in Capitol Hill, and I mean, I've walked around that neighborhood and I've imagined like, what block this family lives on, and like even like the route that maybe Chance may have run with the Lincoln head as he fled from the police. So I mean, it informs so much of the play.
So for both of you, one of the things that I found interesting in the play, and this character of Adam, he's the white neighbor, it feels like we're having a lot more conversations about this idea of allyship and also this idea of white saviorism. And I'm wondering how you all see those two things juxtaposed against each other, because sometimes they feel like two sides of the same coin. And especially thinking about in the context of Lincoln, who, we can't put words in his mouth, but I don't know if I would have called him an ally or a white savior, although I'm sure people assign him that role. How are you all thinking of that?
Yeah.
I don't think Lincoln would have considered himself a white savior or an ally for that matter. He was very clear about why he was doing what he was doing. It was to preserve the Union. And if he says if he could have done it, without freeing a single enslaved person, he would have done it. So I think he saw himself as someone who was very practical, who was willing to do whatever was necessary to keep the country together. And that was the thing that would work, the only thing that would work at that point. The allyship, versus the savior, the Adam character, I found as it was almost like an extreme wokeism.
Exactly.
Someone who just really went over the edge.
Exactly.
And then at the end, when I realized it was all a game, I thought, interesting. Okay, I see he was trying to make a point. I was delighted with the fact that I think what you were trying to show is that people have to be acknowledged in what they believe. Even if you disagree with it, you have to acknowledge that it's their belief and you deal with it on that level. And so whether Adam was an ally or well, he certainly was not a savior. He wasn't trying to do that. He was trying to be an ally. But I think he didn't understand what it meant to be an ally. And I think that's true for most people. People think that they're liberal and they're not. It's just, it's very difficult to recognize that perhaps you are flawed in terms of your beliefs. And I think your play showed that, especially.
Yeah. Thank you. I see Lincoln as sort of the proto-liberal, sort of like the Neanderthal version of liberals, like the first guy. And that's in our popular imagination because, like you said, he was way more complex than that. But I think the myth of Lincoln is so much larger than the truth. So that's really what I was dealing with a lot. And then looking at like the direct link and connection between Lincoln and then like a character like Adam, like in what ways has he evolved now to the point where now he's up on his feet and walking. And we do like subtle things, like even like with the actor who plays Adam, there's the beard and just like
Both their names start with A.
That could have been a subconscious thing, right? But yeah, so there's definitely a link between Lincoln and Adam.
I'm interested in how you all think of art and history as being in collaboration with one another, because this entire series we have all these different organizations in collaboration with one another, like that got us here. And yeah, I'm wondering how you think of art and history working together as we look back, as it teaches us things, as we glean things from it. How do you think of those being in collaboration?
Well, I think it's a natural partnership. I can't think of anything in history that the study that would not benefit from that kind of collaboration. As I said before, it's just so much easier to convey ideas through the arts, I think, than it is just certainly in a standard textbook that no one wants to read. So, and in terms of what's happening here at this center and what's happening at Mosaic, I mean, it's a perfect kind of partnership, I think, and we need to see more of it.
Yeah, there's certainly conversation with each other, and art and history influence one another. I think about like the Black Arts Movement, and even in terms of like hip hop and sort of like the early roots of hip hop, and then not popular hip hop, because I'm a big critic of sort of the popular hip hop that's out, but there's a lot of hip hop that is still connected to the original roots of hip hop as sort of a tool for social change. And I think, again, that goes back to a Black tradition of us melding things together and not really compartmentalizing one thing or another. But if you have a family function, there's music, which is art. There's dancing. There's food, there's cuisine, and then oftentimes you'll have stories, family stories. We sit around, you talk about that oral tradition. Somebody might start talking about your elders and what they have done. That's history, but on a personal level and on a micro level. I don't necessarily disconnect that from the grander history that we talk about. So yeah, that's how I view it.
But I think the problem arises when that becomes commercialized, because with hip hop, for instance, once it became so commercialized, you sort of lost the history and the culture and everything else.
100% agree.
Same thing with blaxploitation films, just
Yep.
outrageous kinds of things occurring because people wanted to make money.
Yep. And then get into capitalism and what that does and how that sort of bends a message and then perverts sort of the natural beauty and flow of art,
I could sit here and ask you all questions all day, but I would like to turn it over to the audience. Does anyone in the audience have a question?
Let me just quickly give you a microphone.
So I was wondering if any of you could speak to whether there was an alternative statue that was considered to this one. I've heard that there was one that actually is what you spoke about. There were multiple people under, in the statue. And if there was an alternative statue, who influenced this one being chosen over the other one?
Well, the other one was too expensive.
Yeah.
So it had to do with money.
Yep. Yep.
And the reason why, we have this image of the man half kneeling is because Thomas Ball borrowed it from images that everyone was accustomed to, that particular image, because it was in abolitionist tracts and so forth, so it had been medallions and so forth had that image on it. So it's not like Thomas Ball just came up with this idea on his own. It was something that was very common out there.
But there's a specific, I don't, forgive me, the name of the artist is escaping.
The name of the figure, Archer
Well, the name
Alexander.
of the figure is Archer Alexander, but
Thomas Ball.
Thomas Ball did this, but then a woman actually
Yes.
came up with a design,
Hausner or something like that.
something like
Yeah.
that.
Hausen.
Yes. But and it was too expensive, but it was great. It was incredible. It was this, menagerie of different black people. Lincoln was also in it, but there was no imagery like that. It
Right.
was great. I mean,
Let's make it now.
that's right.
Let's do it. I mean, not me. That's not my gift. But somebody, I feel like, yeah. Let's do it.
Well, we built a museum on the mall. We can do that too.
Yeah.
Right.
Hi, greetings from the Lincoln Group of DC, which currently today is having a depiction of Charlotte Scott in her
Yes.
presentation. So
Great.
there's a bounty of Lincoln and history and legacy and art that's amazing. I'm thinking about, I'm in the Lincoln Group because I enjoy looking at the time, looking at the conditions at the time versus a retrospective where we are now. It is so hard to just our mentality and impose and say, why weren't you like this? I taught in Alabama State in Montgomery, and there in Tuskegee, there's a statue of
Booker T. Washington.
Washington over the rising,
Yeah, lifting the veil.
lifting the veil. And so at the time, and looking at context. So I'd like to get your impression and understanding of time travel. Art for me is time travel, being there in that mentality and being here in this mentality, just zooming back and forth. And the play that you've already also done, the Vineyard play that you saw, that's got that kind of history. It could blow your mind. How do you keep things straight so that you're really honestly looking and being in one place versus another and trying to be as honest as possible and legitimate?
For me, it's all about your collaborators. Like, have a brilliant director like Reg Douglas who really asks you questions that are not only about the content and subject matter, but questions as an artist. Because that's the discipline that I would adhere to, not the disciplines and parameters of a historian, but the disciplines and parameters and dramaturgy of a playwright. That's what's going to help you create a time machine and then create enough portals so that people can step in. Now, you still might want to create a machine that makes people feel a little uneasy. This play is a challenging piece. It's meant to challenge people. It's not, it's meant to give you joy as well, but it's not meant to sort of lull you to sleep. It's actually meant to give you a prodding, right? So if you're with collaborators who are on board and who are rigorous and who bring a certain amount of artistic rigor to the process, I think that's your friend in terms of time travel. But then again, that makes me think of Douglas, who was so ahead of his time. That's part of why I think he was bothered by it, is because he's still ahead of his time. He's beyond where we were, I think, in many ways. But I think it comes back to really trying to create as engaging and as captivating a piece of art as possible.
Yeah, and keep in mind, most people didn't object to it at that time. But as a historian, we are told to avoid presentism. That if you're talking about the 19th century, you should be interpreting it from that perspective. But historians bring baggage to the study of history. I look at history from the perspective of someone who grew up in a rural community where the population was 82% African American, And we had no power at all, at all. Was bused to a segregated school system. There was a 3-tiered system where there was white, black, and Native American, or people consider themselves Native American. But the point is, no matter how much we try to be objective, some of that is going to seep in. Because, if there's something called humanity, and humanity doesn't differ just because you're in the 19th century or you're in the 20th century or the 21st century. There's certain standards that you should adhere to if you're trying to make certain that you're treating everyone as a part of humanity. So I can't forgive what people thought in the 19th century if it was inhumane. So, and I don't think we need to forgive that, and we don't have to. I don't feel that I have to bend my values to make people in the 19th century look better. I try to be objective, but there's just some things you cannot accept.
Hi, I'm very interested in these conversations about the intersections of art and history because I write plays in the evening and spend my days teaching children about primary sources at the Library of Congress. But I was wondering and thinking about this and thinking about the role that artists have as researchers. What obligation do you feel in presenting source materials to the audience in your work?
That's a great question. I happen to love research, but I think for each play and for each artist, what that means is different, and sort of the focus and the connection to research varies, and I think that's fine. Ultimately, I think it's about, it comes back to the play and you creating something that you intended to create and something that hopefully connects with an audience in whatever way you choose. But I don't think there's, like if you're writing a history-based piece, I think your obligation is to truthfully describe it. So if this is a play that is, like you mentioned, out of the vineyard, I conducted interviews with people, so that, I mean, verbatim, these were their words, this is what they said. That was history on a different sort of level. With this play, much more freedom in terms of where I could sort of go with the material because it's absurd. So in some ways, the form of the play also dictates what the parameters are as well.
Is there one final question?
Hi, thank you. This is fabulous. I love your analyses. Terrific stuff. Okay, you want it to come down, and if you do, where do you want it to go?
Do you want to take it, or I can?
Go right ahead.
I think that is one solution. I don't think that is the only solution. I think if it were to be relocated to a museum, I think that feels like a responsible thing to do. But to leave it up as is, I just don't think there's any context for our, eyes in 2023. I mean, there's so much iconography in that monument that goes unmissed if no one tells you about it. If you don't know about it, then it just seems like an irresponsible piece of art to me. So I think bringing it down is one thing, adding to it and creating a monument around it perhaps might be a way to do it. I think the community should have a voice, though, in what should happen to the piece. But I wouldn't be mad if it was gone tonight, if somebody, you know, chopped off the head of Lincoln.
Now, this is the first time we've disagreed tonight. Keep it where it is. Keep your hands off of the Emancipation Monument. That whole thing was paid for by Black people, people who had very little money to begin with. So they sacrificed to put that monument there. I agree with you that as it stands now, something needs to be done. But I think you can use that as an example. Keep it there to teach people exactly how Black people were viewed during that period. And then put all of this other stuff there to show exactly what Black people did. But don't touch the monument.
Could I just
Keep
do
Lincoln's head.
Could I just do a quick follow-up? Signage all the way around with this
Yes,
debate. This
absolutely.
debate, signage.
Yes.
Let people read the debate, number one. Number two, sir, if the head goes missing, are you going to be charged?
I thought about that. Now something happens, everybody's going to come to Mosaic. We did it.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for those wonderful questions and this wonderful panel. Can we give everybody a hand to participate in this tonight? Reg, did you want to say a few words?
And I still like you.
Thank you, everybody. My name is Reg Douglas. I'm the artistic director at Mosaic Theater. What we just did is exactly why we exist, why we're producing this play. We laughed through our differences. We had disagreements about what this city could be, but together we can't imagine what it could be, and that's exactly the work we want to do. That's why we're so proud and excited and honored to have Psalm on our team as our playwright in residence, to be producing his world premiere, to be partnering with Hill Center is a dream. We were already planning our next partnership because this building and the staff that works here are really leading, I think, the city on creative programming that brings together different communities, different perspectives into one room. And that's exactly why we do theater. So thank you, Marianne, for planning this. Thank you, Shrita, for all of your leadership. To this team here for making this happen. To Dr. Medford, thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for your excellent moderation. We got to get you to Mosaic, too.
Yeah.
And it's such a gift to be in collaboration with you, Psalm, as you know. And I'm so excited to share Monuments of Travesty with everybody. So please come out and see the play. If you're on Facebook and Zoom, come out. We run until October 1st at the Atlas on 8th Street. And we are very proud to be presenting a DC story to a DC community. So thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you again, and good night.